Welcome to blutalks.
I am so excited to be here today to help you learn a new way of seeing your body. So many of us have been told a very clinical explanation of our womb, of our cycle, but we've never really been taken on this journey of going into the sacredness of what the cycle holds, the power, the wisdom, the gifts that it has to offer us. So essentially today, I'm going to be giving you your health class that you never received in high school, that we all deeply desired, especially as teenagers. And as women now, of whatever age, even menopausal or postmenopausal, this is for you. The sacredness of the womb does not disappear with the physiological responses like a bleed time. Once this womb is activated, it is activated until the day we die. So what you'll be learning here is this wisdom that you can weave in to your everyday to find your superpowers regardless of your age. And for all the men in the audience, I know you're probably getting a little uncomfortable with that. You're like, do I need to be here for this talk? You do, because there are pearls of wisdom in here for you to understand the women in your life better. Essentially, I'm going to be giving you the operational manual of all the women in your life, regardless if that's intimate relationships, whether that is family relationships, whether that's coworkers. For so long in our history, the divine feminine, the wisdom of the womb has been shut down and ignored. And we've operated in a very masculine, not healthy masculine, but a masculine frame of work. And it's not that it's bad, it's that there is another system that we need to learn so that way we can all flourish. There has to be a merging of the divine feminine and the divine masculine so that way we can really amplify what we're putting out into the world. So, a womb revivalist. I like to call myself a womb revivalist because that is what my passion is. My passion is to help women to go within, to rediscover their inner powers, the inner source of everything that lies within them, to understand how they've been asleep and how they can really awaken to this mystery and to this wise wisdom that lies within our womb space. Now, I did not grow up in a home where we were a period positive household. We did not talk about our bleeds at supper time. Probably would have freaked my father out. But there was this inherent knowing from the day that it began for myself on my journey, that I knew it was something that I had to shame, that it was dirty, that it was something you don't discuss, and at all costs you hide it. You do not go to work and say, leave me alone, I'm bleeding today. But this is what we've been taught. And this was not because my parents or my father or my brother made me feel uncomfortable about it. It was an inherent inner knowing. It was something I was born to know that you just don't do this. And so I'm here to shift all that, to rattle the cages, to break the ceiling, to change how we feel about this wisdom of our womb. I like to take women on a journey from feeling broken, from feeling overwhelmed, and from feeling disconnected in their bodies, to moving into a state of being empowered, of being curious, and having deep inspiration of how they can live their life. And I do this through connecting them to all of their cycle. Most of us, at least I knew at the time when I was in the start of my journey, that I had a bleed time and I had a turn where I could potentially get pregnant. And that's all I knew. And if someone really challenged me of what were the 4 stages, if they said there were 4 stages, I probably would have said there is a, thank God I feel normal again. Oh no, I might get pregnant, or oh yay, I might get pregnant. And leave me alone, I'm PMSing. And oh crap, this is happening again. When is this gonna end in my life? Those were my 4 stages. There was no wisdom, there was no beauty. It wasn't until I went on a fertility journey, 2 years of trying to conceive, having medical professionals tell me that I was broken, that my body parts needed to be removed, and that only medical intervention would ever get me pregnant, and with a huge price tag. That I walked out of there and said, there has to be more. There has to be a way to heal my body. And I'm so glad that I did, because for the first time in my life, I learned what my womb was about. I learned my wisdom. I healed my body. I had 3 babies, regardless of what the medical convention or the conventional medical world said. And I unleashed a superpower in me that I didn't even know existed. University Kate would never have thought that she was going to be talking about periods in her 40s. Women's bodies, we are so connected with nature. It amazes me how connected we are with Mother Nature. We are connected with the Earth cycle, we're connected with the lunar cycle. And here's a really little fun fact for you. Men are cyclical too. It's just that men's hormonal system resets on a 24-hour clock. A woman's hormonal system resets 28 days approximately. So we can see how the systems that are in place right now are to help men thrive because their hormonal system is 24 hours. We need more time. We need to have that time to marinate in the wisdom. And when we do, what I like to do is always to look at breaking the cycle up into 4 stages and linking them to the seasons to connect us with nature. So we know if we look at from a clinical lens, we have a menstruation, we have a follicular phase, the days after our bleed, we have an ovulation, and we have a luteal phase. Our luteal phase is the time after ovulation but before our bleed. I like to refer to it as our inner winter, our inner spring, our inner summer, and our inner fall. So that we can begin to deeply connect with the wisdom that's happening within our womb, and that we can start to move in the way that we already know how to move. Everyone knows how to move in the environmental seasons out there. So let's go on this journey. Our inner winter. Inner winter is a time where our hormones have completely dropped. Everything in our body. That cocktail that was feeding our body for the other 3 phases is gone, which is why the body is eliminating. It's withdrawing. It is shedding what it's no longer serving. Now, when we live in a winter season, how many of us like to go play out in the snow? And how many of us enjoy hibernating, having a cup of tea, sitting by a fire? This is what our inner winter really wants us to do. Our inner winter is asking us, can we pause? Can we surrender? Can we just be still? This is not something that society supports us saying, but this is our wisdom. How can we unfold into complete surrendering? How can we reduce what we're doing, even just by 20%, to let the body feel that we're honoring her rhythm? Now, here's a really cool thing about the winter, or about our menstruation, is that with all these hormones dropping, the barrier between the right and the left hemisphere of the brain is at its thinnest, which means information flows through both lenses. This is why we are intuitive creatures as women. This is what heightens our intuition, is by being in this still state. So if we allow ourselves to rest, we are ultimately allowing our intuition to speak to us. Our cycle is a creation cycle. We actually create a human life, but we also create in so many other ways. So if we pause in this intuition, if we allow ourselves stillness, our intuition heightens, and our next step forward into whatever we are creating is allowed to be birthed. So to unlock our power in our inner winter is to rest and surrender. That's really a hard thing to do. We might think it's easy, but it's not. But if we do this, you will learn to love your period. And what I have found working with clients for years is that when they do pause, when they do surrender during this time, things like fibroids, painful periods, all of that heals and resolves itself. This is the key. It's resting, it's allowing ourselves the space of what our divine feminine is really asking us to do. From our inner winter, we move into our inner spring. Our inner spring is a time where the thaw happens. It is actually a time in our body where the uterine lining starts to rebuild and it starts to layer itself and the follicles start to develop and the eggs start to get prepped. It is the stage of getting all the prep work done. When we think of the spring outside, we see the snow melting on the ground. We see the sun a little bit brighter, probably because we're in this lens of there's no more snow, thank God. That we start to think in terms of summer. We start to feel inspired. We start to feel this rising energy and can't wait to go out and play. In fact, this just happened to me this summer, and it was such a great metaphor for what our spring was. The snow melted, the sun was shining. My first instinct was to throw on my Tom shoes, put on my capri pants, and go outside without a jacket. I got 2 steps out my front door and was like, what did I just do? It's freezing outside. But this is what happens in our spring. Our spring, after this time of rest, after this time of release, we just want to jump out there. And the reason that happens is because we have estrogen in our system. The primary hormone for here is this hormone that wakes us up, that makes us want to go from an outward energy an inward energy to an outward energy. It makes us social. Our vocabulary is heightened. Our brain is primed for conversations. This is the time to public speak. So all the women that are coming on stage today, if you're in your spring phase, you're going to kill this. Because we have the ability to entertain during our spring. But we have to be cautious. Because if we jump too quickly, if we go outside with our toe shoes, we're going to freeze ourselves. So to unlock your power here in the spring is to ease in, to know that the summer, the full playful season is about to come. But we need to ease. We need to cherish ourselves. We need to make sure that if we're jumping in with both feet, that it's because it's actually honoring who we are and what we want in life. And not because I have to go do all these different things for everybody else in the world, or I have all these deadlines. We got to be toe into it. We got to let that energy build versus just forcing ourselves. And this will help us with burnout. Now, our inner summer, we are all very familiar with. This is what society loves. Society wants us to stay here in our inner summer season. The reason why it wants us to stay here is because our summer is when we have everything. We have the full cocktail. Menstruation, and you have nothing. The glass is empty. Here, we're trying every drink possible. We have our estrogen, we have our progesterone, we have our testosterone. Like the full chemical mix is happening here. And this is what makes us feel so outgoing. This is what makes us the great communicator. It's because we have the benefits of both sides of the spectrum. We have everything coming to its peak and giving us that heightened energy. We are the great communicator here in this phase. We are great people to empathize. I always say that in my inner summer, this is when I choose to fight with my husband. Not because I have a better vocabulary, which I do at this time in my seasons, but because I can actually hear what he has to say and not take it personally. And I actually have the vocabulary, and I can slow down, and I can be patient with myself and really think about my words before I release them out to him so that I'm actually communicating what I need. In our work life, this is the time to ask for a raise. This is when we are like super salespeople or manipulators, however you want to look at it. But we have the power to get what we want here because we demand attention and people want you. We're charismatic. We actually are attracting people in during this season. So this is the time to go for it. If you think of the creation cycle and of building something, and let's think work-wise, this would be the time where in our spring, we thought of the idea, we got the wheels going, but this is where we go out and we sell it. You need this. You need this because if you don't get it, you're going to be missing out. This is the power of our summer. So because all those hormones are really heightened, to unlock our power here is to celebrate and to play. There is no bounds here. And if you think of somewhere outside, it's usually the time that we stay up way too late. We book way too many social events, and we are thriving still. We don't feel depleted by it. We're like, okay, what's the next thing? Like, we're going to ride bikes now? What are we going to do, right? So we get so amped up here, and that's because our hormones are wanting to support that. So I encourage you to unlock this superpower. Go out and play. Don't have any rules. Just go and be you in your fullest form. People are going to love you, guaranteed. Now our inner fall. This is a tricky one because so many women have only been taught and have been told that this is PMS. This is not PMS. This is women moving from 2 seasons that were very outward in their approach to having a hormonal shift of now estrogen being gone and progesterone taking over. Progesterone is what makes us sedated. It makes us going from outward energy to coming back inwards and reflecting. It is preparing us for our deep rest. We cannot go from summer into winter. That would be too drastic. We need the fall to harvest. We need the fall to think about what had just happened. And does it really serve me? Is it really working for me? What do I need to change? You know, when you get those moments in your thought processes, is you're like, I don't even know where that thought came from or that how I problem solved that, but I did. That is the energy of the fall. When we allow ourselves to revert back inwards, to come inward with that energy, when we allow to close our door and say, I need time to process, to allow my creative zone to really amplify, that is the magic of the inner fall. That is when we can go in to our winter to release and then come back with the next best version of what we already are in the process of creating. So it's not PMSing. The reason why we get grouchy here is because we try to be our summer self in our fall. So we move from being very outward, saying yes all the time, ovulation's the power of yes, to now obviously being in a place where we're telling ourselves that we have to say no, that we have to do what's best for us. And that doesn't feel good for the world. The world doesn't like us to say that we have boundaries. The world does not like us to say, no, we can't do all these things for everybody else. But that is when we get cranky. So if we take our time and really go inwards and nourish ourselves, we can actually really love the fall. And everyone in our lives can love the fall because they know what the expectations are. In our house, I refer to my seasons all the time. If I tell my husband I'm in my inner fall, he knows what I need. He knows not to ask me to go do these 10 different errands to make his life easier, because it doesn't make my life easier. I always like to use the analogy with the inner fall. If we go back to the idea of the 24-hour clock from the testosterone, the male hormone, to reset. How many of us have men in our lives? They come home from work around 6 o'clock. They're already a little grouchy because they're entering their fall season now, right? This is their fall time, midday of the day. So they're a little grouchy because they just want alone time. And then all of a sudden they declare, I need a 30-minute bathroom break. And I'm going to take my tablet, I'm going to take my phone. Let's be serious. Nobody needs 30 minutes in the bathroom. This is because they're asking for their own alone time. They're asking for themselves to go inwards and just have a break. They just use the bathroom. So I give every woman here full permission to use your metaphorical bathroom break and declare it your time. Because that's what we need. We just need a week of it. And that doesn't mean that we can't live out in the real world. It means that we need to carve out pockets of time for our self-care. If we do this, our creative zone amplifies. We can really think outside the box and problem solve. So to unlock your power here is to nurture yourself and to let go of what's no longer serving in your life. Release it. When we tap into the wisdom of the womb, when we start to live this way, we're giving ourselves permission to live in all 4 seasons. We're not saying, I like summer best, so I'm only going to hang out here, and I'm going to ignore the rest, because that's what we've been doing, and it hasn't been working for us. That's why we have infertility, why we have menstrual conditions, why we have PMS, why we're burnt out. Instead, we need to be able to go, I can flow through all 4 of these. I can see the power, I can see the wisdom, and I can live cyclically. And when we do this, we allow our superpowers to help us. We allow them to help us by staying connected to ourselves. When we stay connected to ourselves, we're hearing the whispers of our soul. We're actually allowing ourselves to grow and become who it is that we deeply want to be in the world. We're giving ourselves permission. We learn to listen to what it is that is the felt sense within us. We are so disconnected of how I'm feeling. When we go into the sacred cycle, it's no longer looking at an app saying, it says that I'm here. Instead of like, oh, okay, I can feel that shift. This is what's happening. And the more that we get into this felt sense, the more we start to live our life in alignment. And then we learn to live unapologetically in our lives. This isn't just for ourselves, but for other women. When we see a woman who looks like she's burnt out, that she's half asleep at work, part of our brain could go, I bet you she's in her menstruation. I bet you she needs a little bit of downtime. Why don't I offer you to get her a cup of tea, close her door, and not ask her questions today because she has enough on her plate. Her body's doing some stuff. That is how we live unapologetically, is that we create space for everyone to live in their rhythms. And in doing so, we get to live in ours. So by doing this, we come into a relationship with ourselves. We start to see how our body's functioning, and we choose us over how we should be. And this is why I do what I do. I help women weave the wisdom of their womb so that they can come back into balance with their body, so that they can start to think creatively of how can I bring my womb wisdom into my relationships, into my parenting, into my self-care, into my work life. How can I begin to amplify how I live cyclically in my life? So I invite you today, break the ceiling of how you've been doing things. Ask yourselves, how can I get curious so that I can weave the wisdom of my womb into my everyday life, so that I can feel inspired, so I can be my truest self, not only for me, but for everybody in my life. And just as a closure here, if you're like, oh my God, I need to know more, I have 2 amazing free ebooks. Just go to my website, /free gifts, and grab them. One is a sacred cycle chart to get you on this journey, and the other one is the self-care for the inner goddess, to learn how to reframe how we're thinking of our self-care practices according to our hormones. Thank you, everyone.